Dr. Peter Glidden here, your steadfast advocate for health. If you like what you see on this YouTube channel, please visit my Facebook page. It's the same address, glidden.healthcare, and the same also for my website, glidden.healthcare. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a licensed naturopathic physician. I have 28 years of clinical experience helping people to recover their health with naturopathic therapeutics. Today I want to talk about an article that I saw on the BBC. This was forwarded to one of my followers in Canada. The strange link between the human mind and quantum physics. The strange link between the human mind and quantum physics. Basically, the notion here is that quantum physics, right, which is the interactions of atoms on an atomic scale, a submolecular scale, the stuff that happens between atoms and electrons and protons and neutrons and photons and quarks and mesons and all that stuff. Science says the scientific community can't figure it out. They can't figure it out. Albert Einstein couldn't figure it out. We know how the stuff in the world works. We know force equals mass times velocity and so forth and so on. We know at what point water boils and water freezes, right? We can define and codify stuff in the physical world, but in the subatomic world, it seems that the rules of the physical world go out the window, and the scientific community has been trying to bridge this gap forever, and they can't do it. So the notion here that the BBC reported on, bbc.com, is there are some people in the scientific community that are starting to think, well, wait a minute. We don't know what the real nature of consciousness is. We don't know what the real nature of quantum physics is. Maybe there's a link. And this is interesting to talk about because this notion of the disconnect between the scientific understanding of how the human body works from a medical point of view and how the human body really does work, this disconnect is why everybody's sick. Here's the deal in a nutshell. Your medical doctor is not trained in medicine. Your medical doctor is trained in allopathic medicine. And allopathic medicine is based on reductionistic physics. And reductionism argues if it can't be measured, it doesn't exist. Reductionism argues since nobody's ever dissected the spirit out of a human body, it doesn't exist. Reductionism argues that consciousness itself is a function of biochemistry, and that when the human body dies, it's lights out, game over. There's no such thing as God. There's no such thing as the spirit. There's no such thing as the vital force. These are all fictions created by crazy people. So the medical doctor believes that the human body is a bag of biochemicals waiting to break. And when it does break, it's not the MD's job to fix it. It's the MD's job to manage it. You know, of the thousands of prescription medications that there are, the only ones that cure anything are antibiotics, and those are starting to fail us. So when you're up against an illness and you go to an MD, the MD's job is to exert a hostile takeover of the biochemistry of the body, forcing the body the way that the scientist wants it to go. So you get an antibiotic, an anti-inflammatory, an antidepressant, an antacid. You get something to fight the illness. Because the entire system of MD-directed medicine is based on reductionism, which argues there is no such thing as spirit. Consciousness is a function of biochemistry. The body's a bag of biochemicals waiting to break, and the only thing that you can do is manage the brokenness until you die. So your heartburn is never cured, it's managed. Your blood pressure is never cured, it's managed. Nothing is cured. And this is why everybody is sick. Alzheimer's out of control, autism out of control. Obesity is so rampant now in the United States that Hollywood is making TV shows and movies painting morbidly obese people as normal. You can't fat shame somebody because, that's just the way that their body is. Well, no, it's not. They're sick. It's not a normal thing. Asthma is not normal. Migraine headaches are not normal. All of these things are happening because of the fundamental juvenile nature of the understanding that the MDs bring to bear on the nature of the human experience. Now, this happens because of this notion, right? Physics and metaphysics, and never the twain shall meet. Metaphysical phenomena, if they are real, are by definition outside of the bounds of physics to be able to codify and measure, by definition. It's like this whole thing that's happening in society now with immigrants. You know, people are defining immigrants as anybody that wants to come into the country, and that's not correct. An immigrant, by definition, is somebody who has legally entered into the United States or any other country. Legally. Done it all by the rule of law. If you sneak across the border, you're not an immigrant. You are an illegal alien. But, you know, this is trying to be changed now. Oh, anybody that wants to come into the country is an immigrant. No, they're not. So, this same kind of re-architecting of the worldview and wordsmithing is existing now inside of the medical culture. Consciousness itself, from the holistic point of view, is a real thing, and consciousness existed before the body, and consciousness will persist after the body dies. All major world religions argue this. It doesn't matter which one. It doesn't matter if you're a Buddhist, if you're a Hindu, if you're a Jew, if you're a Christian, if you're Baptist, if you're a Mormon, if you're a Jehovah's Witness. Every major world religion believes in God, and every major world religion attempts to define the relationship between the human being and the divine. Every one. But the scientific community says, oh, no, because nobody's ever proven God exists. God is a fiction. And never the twain shall meet here, because by definition, you cannot prove a metaphysical phenomenon. You can experience it, but you can't prove it. You know, I stole this from the movie Contact, you know, with Jodie Foster. It was a pretty good movie, quite frankly. Here's a perfect example of the unprovability of metaphysical phenomena. Do you love your mother? You do? Prove it. I'd like you to prove it. Can you prove it? Prove that you love your mother. You can't. You know that you do, but you can't prove it. You could have an out-of-the-body experience right now. Go to heaven, have lunch with God, come back into your body and tell everybody what a wonderful time you had, and everybody would think you're crazy because you could not prove that it had happened. Can't prove it. By definition, you cannot prove a metaphysical phenomenon by definition. So the scientific community rejects everything metaphysical outright, when perhaps a more sophisticated, humanistic, scientific, perhaps. I think we need to come up with a better word. We need to come up with a better word here to describe how science should look at these things. Would be to investigate the cultures around the world who have made it their life's mission to experience and understand the true nature of consciousness. There's a culture of people in southern India called the Siddhantans. The Siddhantans' raison d'etre was to experience firsthand the nature of consciousness. Experience it firsthand. Paramahansa Yogananda wrote about this tangentially in his classic bioptic autobiography of a yogi. But my point here is that if consciousness exists as an independent thing, then it must, by definition, have an intimate relationship with the workings of the human body. And this is what every holistic, medical, philosophical organization in the world believes. The human body is we are spiritual beings having physical experiences, and it is the essence of our spiritual nature which is running the show. Your body is so smart it grew itself all by itself from a single cell into you. It did that all by itself. Science would have you believe it's all just biochemical reactions, but it's not. Your body is taking care of millions of biochemical processes right now, all of which are outside of your conscious control. Holistic physicians argue that all of this is orchestrated by your spirit, your vital force, your ki, call it what you will. And this is why there's such a gigantic problem with our health. Because the major medical systems of the world are reductionistic. And they're not intended to cure. And reductionism is good for broken bones and bullets in your arm and bleeding arteries. That's what it's good for. But reductionism is horrible for everything else. Because the reductionistic philosophy is inconsistent with the reality of the human being, which is that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. So, it is the holistic physician's job, whether you're a chiropractor, a homeopath, a naturopath, an herbalist, an Ayurvedic practitioner, a traditional Chinese medical, or acupuncturist. It is the holistic doctor's job to deliver therapies which support your body's built-in God-given ability to fix itself. And you wouldn't believe the things that I've seen people recover from. This is not a panacea cure-all for all human ills. It's not the philosopher's stone that cures everything, turns everything into gold. It's not that. But it is a sophisticated, apt understanding of the true nature of the human experience. This is why the MDs have failed us, because they have thrown the baby out with the bathwater in their just abject dismissal of everything that can't be measured. So, from the holistic perspective, consciousness is a metaphysical phenomenon. Consciousness has existed before the body was born, and consciousness will persist after the body dies. And it would perhaps be prudent for the bold amongst us to investigate firsthand consciousness. And this is what the entire practice of yoga, all of the different disciplines of yoga and meditation, and that's why they existed. To help people experience for themselves in real time their true nature. And this is where there is a big disconnect between the scientific community and everybody else, because science dismisses everything metaphysical. And perhaps as we move forward and evolve, that there will be bridges which will be built between the metaphysical and the physical. And perhaps this article by the BBC, The Strange Link Between the Human Mind and Quantum Physics, is a step in that direction. Although, quite frankly, all of the mystical components of all major world religions for the last 5,000 years have been arguing the same thing, so this isn't new news. This is, quite frankly, from the holistic perspective, old news, but nonetheless, we do what we can, and we move from where we are now forward. Ladies and gentlemen, look, it might be an upsetting thing for you to consider, but in point of fact, it's true. The best possible thing that you can do to help your body be healthy is to fire your medical doctor. Because your medical doctor may be the nicest person that God ever created, but your medical doctor is trained in a philosophy of medicine which is old-fashioned, outdated, inconsistent with the reality of the human experience. And by the way, in the United States, MD-directed medical therapeutics are the leading cause of death and the leading cause of bankruptcy. And while we have let these people control the delivery of medicine, all chronic diseases are accelerating. And it's not because we have a bad gene, or there's electromagnetic radiation, or there's an overabundance of toxic crap in the environment. All these things are present. But the reason that we are sick globally and getting sicker is because the people that we go to for medical care, the MDs, are trained in a philosophical understanding of medicine which is inconsistent with the reality of the human experience. So, because it's a monopoly, and you don't have equal access to Ayurvedic, naturopathic, homeopathic, you have to hunt and peck for that stuff. You need to educate yourself, because these things are not readily available to you. And that's why I have devoted the last 5 years of my life to putting together an online self-help health recovery program. You sick and tired of being sick and tired? Are you finally at the end of your rope? You know that there has to be a better way for you to proceed? Well, there is. And it was developed and delivered by licensed, regulated physicians, holistic physicians. Read all about it at my website, glidden.healthcare. Ladies and gentlemen, enough is enough. MD-directed, reductionistic, allopathic, pharmaceutical-centrist, oppositionally defiant medicine, quite frankly, should be outlawed. It is the wrong dog for the hunt if you are attempting to recover from a chronic disease or support your body's ability to be strong and healthy. I am your steadfast advocate for health, Dr. Peter Glidden. Thanks for your time. See you around campus.